these nowadays because they're easier than making a full video. But I just, this is like a follow-up to the other lives I've been doing and maybe just all the content that I've been putting on this channel in general. But I really wanted to talk about the fact that, here I go mentioning Princella again, but as I've been listening more of her content and listening to her message as far as, men just wanting to use women and everything, I've been paying even closer attention to the way that I hear men speak about women. Because I know that the argument could be made like, well, women use men too, and, not all men, et cetera, et cetera. But, today I was listening to two YouTubers that I watch. Maybe I'll name drop them later. I don't know. I gotta think about it. But I have kind of realized lately, and this is even before I was like listening to Princella, even when I was just listening to other men talk about men, as I listened to them, I started to realize that any time that they spoke about women in regards to anything having to do with like romance or relationship, anything like that, I realized that I really didn't agree with what they had to say at all. And the reason why I didn't agree is because it was like everything that they said went against a woman's self-interest. It was like everything they said, and I mean, I guess I shouldn't really be surprised because they're men, but still, I think it just goes to show, like I have in the title of this video, that a lot of times men aren't really thinking about a woman's self-interest or what it is that she wants or anything. They're caring about themselves. It's all about them. Like, it's all about them. Because, they were talking about like the whole concept of, dating apps and everything. And they were talking about like, yeah, people are just going on there to hook up. And if you wanted something else, like that's your fault, blah, 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 right? And like that made me think of two things. One, it made me think of how men constantly blame women for literally everything. It feels like anyway. But then two, the bigger thing, and the reason for the title of this video with the value not being reciprocated, is just really the fact that they felt like that. And I'm not saying that it's not true, because it is true, right? Like dating apps, I'm going to say this right now. I don't know why dating apps are referred to as dating apps. They should be called exactly what they are, hookup apps. Because I feel like by calling them dating apps, they give a very false pretense, specifically to women, making them seem as if people on there want to date when they don't. And I feel like that's really a big part of the problem with dating apps, is it just feels like there's a difference between like the marketing / actual usage versus the verbiage that's used to actually describe the app. And I feel like it's very misleading, even if the reality is something that, again, is like pretty much just what I said. It's called a dating app, but everyone seems to use it as a hookup app. But because it's a dating app, a woman very much could go on there just hoping to date, right? And, I've heard people refer to people, especially women who use dating apps, as desperate, which, and that's what these, well, at least one of them out of the two that I was watching today said. It wasn't the first time that I heard this, but I did find it very interesting. Like, it made me think, because between finding women who go on dating apps to be desperate, and the whole concept of dating apps being hookup apps and just the way that men tend to talk about women in general, it came to the conclusion to me that I think a lot of the times women are looking for love. Now, I know it may not be every time, especially depending on the type of girl. Even though I would argue that women who aren't looking for love usually aren't looking for it because of some sort of trauma that they faced in the past, and therefore they no longer are looking for it if they ever were. But I think most women are searching for love, or at least some sort of connection, just something that's gonna, I'll just stick with connection, right? Women, I think, are looking for some sort of connection, something emotional. There we go. Something that's not physical. But when it comes to men, it seems like that's almost never the case. I think I talked about this maybe in my last live. I don't know. But the fact that, like, when a guy, now listen, I understand that if someone is a stranger to you, obviously you don't know anything about them. And so what's going to attract you to them is the way that they look. You find it appealing, right? But I think there's a big difference between a man finding a woman attractive and saying, man, you know, she's really attractive on the outside. I think she, I'm looking for somebody that, I want to be in a relationship. I'm looking for someone. I like the way she looks. So if I like what I like on the outside, let me get to know her and see if I like what's on the inside and see if I can make something happen. There's a difference between that and, oh, this woman's attractive. I want to have sex, right? There's a big difference. And I think that a lot of women are just so frustrated that tends to be the experience. A man approaches them only wanting sex, not to get to know them and then, potentially have sex with them along the lines, like if they like each other and they get to know each other and it's cool. No, it's like, no, they just want to have sex. And if literally nothing else comes of it but that, they're good. They're cool with it. That's all they really wanted anyway. So it's not about the woman as a person, her essence, what makes her who she is. It's just about her body. That is it. And that is why it's so easy for him to discard her after the deed is done, which happens to a lot of women. And I think is one of the main things that contributes to women no longer looking for connections or love from men anymore. But I just think that whole concept, the way that men are so comfortable just using a woman to, and the thing is, it's not like men don't know that most women want more than just sex. They know this, but they don't care. Because as far as they're concerned, as long as they can get what they want, which is sex, they're good. And they like to do it with having to put as little effort in as possible. Obviously, because it's not like they're actually trying to get emotionally invested in this woman. So, the more work they have to put in, I think it's like, ugh, I'm putting in this much work. I can just go find some other girl. It's probably going to be easier. But again, that just goes to show how little they actually care about the woman and who she is. And I feel like a lot of times, even when two people get together, and maybe I'm wrong, I will, heed if I'm wrong, but, a man and a woman will get in a relationship, and then there's still not necessarily this effort to become closer emotionally, at least on the man side. It's more so the woman pushing for it and then the man getting annoyed. And maybe he goes along with it, but also maybe he doesn't and he just complains about it. And essentially he could just be using this woman just for the sex, or maybe there's something else. Maybe she cooks for him or cleans for him, gives him wife benefits despite only being a girlfriend. You know, it could really be anything, but it just seems like there's no real desire for these men to really to actually want like a partner, a companion, you know? Like you'll hear women say, I want to marry my best friend. And I've heard men say it occasionally, but my point, and see, that's the thing. See, I feel like the concept of men are incapable of love. I do think that it applies to most men, which is very unfortunate. But I do think that there are a select few that are beyond that. But I think it's a shame that the number seems to be so low. It really does. It's dishearteningly low. And I've been thinking about, because, you know, I was watching this video, and the YouTuber that I was watching, she was doing like a sponsorship. She was talking about, oh, you need to play this game. And then she talked about how there was this like romance element to it, right? And when she showed it and she showed this guy, he clearly had some sort of crush on the main girl of the game and everything. And even that, all I could think about was how I think part of the problem with women wanting to hold out, but not even every woman does this, right? But for the women who say, okay, yes, there's a lot of men who aren't good, but I'm going to hold out for the one that is. I feel like that is perpetuated by the media, because the media will show these situations where there's this guy and he's really into this girl. Oh, he likes her so much. Oh my gosh. Oh, he has such a crush. Oh, da da da. How often, though, does that really happen in reality? Like, this guy is really feeling this girl and like is actually feeling her, like for her. He likes her personality, the things that she does, her hobbies, etc. Like literally stuff that is unique to her, or not unique, but you know what I mean. It makes her who she is. How often does that really happen in reality versus he sees her, he likes how she looks, and then that triggers some sort of primal urge in him, and he just wants her body. He just wants her physically. And there's really not more to it than that. I'm sure it happens, but I don't think it happens nearly as much as the media tries to perpetuate, which then instills a false narrative in girls. And then they grow up, or not even grow up, even whatever age they are. They're thinking that these boys, these men, whatever age they're at, are feeling that way. And I say this as someone who also felt this way. You know, I saw things in media. I thought that, you know, guys were different than the way that I see them now. And it took me having my own experiences and listening to different people on YouTube talk about it. And, you know, I've said before how I feel a lot of times like the people that I listen to, they say a lot of the same things. They overlap. Even if they wouldn't necessarily all agree with each other, a lot of their points overlap, and I find it really interesting. And so I think that one thing in particular that stands out to me is along with Princella's claim of men are incapable in love, of love, sorry. So one person that I listened to, because I've name dropped him before, so I'm going to do it again. Listen to Tony Gaskins, right? I think that he's given a lot of really interesting and good information regarding men. But there's a few things that he said that I feel like do really fall in line with some of the things that she says. Like, for example, he said that a lot of times when a man proposes to a woman and he marries her, he's marrying her not actually being in love with her. Like, he's not actually in love. He may love her. Now, he says that, you know, he may love her, but he's not in love with her most of the time. It takes time for him to be in love with her. And because he's not in love with her and he just loves her, he still has the capability and potentially willingness to cheat on her, to be open to another relationship of some sort with another woman. He still essentially is keeping his options open, despite the fact that he either has proposed to this woman or is in the early years of being married to this woman, because he's not in love with her. And while he uses the word love in both cases, I do think it's interesting. Again, I still don't know what Princella's 5 components of love are, but I feel like the fact that that distinction is made and the differences and how the man will act depending on what it is, I do think that rings true to what she says, because now I'll say this. I know that this is like a controversial thing that I'm about to say, but I still feel this way. I don't know how many people will agree with me, but it is what it is. But I know that another thing that Tony has said is that he is faithful to his wife, not because he loves her, but because he fears God. And I always have thought that sort of mindset is so I feel like it says a lot, right? Because to me, right, and this is just to me, obviously everyone's going to have a different opinion, but to me, if you love someone, then you're going to be as best as you can, at least. At least you'll want to be on your best behavior because of your love for this person. Like, you love them, therefore you don't want to hurt them. So when you decide to love on them, when you decide to not hurt them, it is because of your love for them. I personally feel like to have to say that the only reason essentially why you're treating someone right is ultimately because of you're afraid you'll get in trouble for it from an outside force. To me, it's like, then it isn't out of love. It isn't out of love. It just feels off to me. It does. And I mean, I get that it has the same overall effect, right? Like, in a sense, whatever it takes. If it takes, a higher being for you to stay faithful, then, whatever kind of ramifications that you have to put in place to not do the wrong thing, fine. I know that is an argument. And I will say that does have, I can't think of the word, but it does do the job. It gets the job done, right? But I just feel like it's not quite the same. I feel like it's similarly to a person who rules with fear or out of being feared versus out of being respected. You may get the same result, but it's still not quite the same, if that makes sense. Even if you get the same result. I mean, the whole essence of it, I feel like it's just different. And so, you know, and like I said, I mean, I do still feel like as long as you, at the end of the day, you don't do the wrong thing for whatever reason that's making you not do it, then that is ultimately good. But I do feel like when it comes to love, that you should be doing things out of love, because of love. But it seems to me that love isn't enough. And actually, now that I think about it, he has, I think I recall him saying that love wasn't enough. And that's part of the reason why he promotes, you know, believing in God and everything, because love is not enough, because, you know, humans are of the flesh and are always, you know, prone to fleshly desires and stuff like that. And so you do need something more. But I don't know. I maybe I'm just sounding like some sort of pick me or something by saying that I feel like I'm built different, but like, I feel like, see, okay, because I know he's made the argument of like, you know, it's like, say there's a job and, you know, you may feel this desire to like steal time from the job, either by like arriving late or leaving early or something like that. But I feel like it's different in a case like that, because I would argue that most people do not love their jobs, okay? I think at best, most people tolerate their jobs. They only do their job because it gives them money. So it's not something that they really are willingly do. It's something that most people are forced into because you need money to survive. So most people aren't choosing jobs out of an organic place, you know? And even when it comes to the question of, oh, well, why do you want to work for this company? It's like, well, because I need a paycheck. I think most people, I don't even think it would be a stretch to say most people hate their jobs, you know, or at the very least, don't like them. Look, even if we said that most people were neutral, which I don't think is true, because I think most people don't want to go. I don't think most people like, and especially do not love, their jobs. So cutting corners or whatever for something that they don't love, for something that they tolerate or whatever, I think that makes a lot of sense. But if you claim to love something, I think that's different. And I think that the way that you should move should be different. I don't know why you would try to take advantage of or treat poorly something that you love, something that you hate or that you just tolerate for the sake of whatever, because you're almost, if not definitely being forced into it in a sense. Then yeah, I get that, because you don't like it. I mean, come on. But if you love something, then it just seems like you should do your best to accommodate for it, to just try to be your best you for that person, thing, whatever it is in that instinct. And so I just don't get why love wouldn't be enough. But if we go with what Princella says, it's not love at all. And if it isn't love, then that makes a lot more sense, I feel like. So, you know, like I said, you know, it feels to me like women put so much stock into what men want and what men think and etc. because they want a man to like them, to notice them, to give them the time of day, to love them. Like women want to be loved and coveted and everything by a man so bad, too bad, I would even argue. And while it certainly could be said that for most men, almost everything they do is for women's attention, right? Because, for a lot of men, if they decide that they're going to get a job that pays a lot of money or whatever, right? Or will get them a certain lifestyle, it's not because they just want to have a lot of money or have a good lifestyle. It's so that they can impress women because they know that's what women like, right? But again, they don't want... Okay, let me put it like this. It's for women. It's not for a woman. And what I mean by that is, again, I go back to what I said before. Men aren't like, yeah, ultimately, I want to be in a relationship. Ultimately, I want to find love. I want to find my partner. No, they want to find multiple girls. It's quantity over quality for a lot of men. They want as many beautiful, attractive women that are going to boost their status in society as they can get. And then they just want to use them for not just that status, but also for sex. That is what a lot of these men want to use a lot of these women for. And a lot of women allow themselves to be used in that way, I believe, either because they have given up on love, as I referred to earlier, or because they are so wrapped up in like this male-centered environment, this patriarchy, whatever you want to call it, that their value as a woman is dictated by the validation of a man. And even if it's not a deep emotional connection, even if it is just a physical thing, a lot of women will feel validated by that because to them, it's still being picked. It's not truly being picked, but to them, at least in some way, they were picked. They were chosen over the other women. They were better because for them, their value, where they are in society, etc., has been nailed down by this man's decision to choose them. And especially if this man himself has all of this status or whatever. But like I said, or at the very least, like I've tried to imply, and maybe I even said this in a different video, I don't think that men, at least usually on average, ever really pick a woman. Not really. They, in some terms, will use a woman, again, usually for status in society and sex, or maybe as a cover-up, whatever, right? But, as far as him actually saying, wow, there's this girl, she's really special. I like her more than all the rest. And I want to pick her. I want to be good to her. I want to keep her happy, love her, right? And I really want to emphasize that love her because I really feel like that love is selfless in the sense that you are willing to sacrifice. You are willing to do what it takes to make sure that she's good, that she feels good about herself, that she is taken care of, that she's getting what she needs, emotionally, spiritually, physically, whatever it is, that you are really giving of yourself for this woman. And, I do think that it should be reciprocated. But I think, on average, most women are going to do that. And again, I think that that's the main difference between men and women. Most women, on average, are going to love a man and do love men, and then a lot of times get played for it. They get cheated on or unalived, whatever else, because they loved this man. So, but a lot of times that's not what happens in reverse. A lot of times the woman, she loves this man, and he's tolerating her because he don't love her. Because if he loved her, he would change his behavior, but he doesn't. Most times, on average. And so many women end up hurt. And again, it's not always that this man is putting hands on her, verbally abusing her, or, cheating on her or whatever. It's not always that. Sometimes it's simply just not putting in as much effort as she does, Maybe she's the one who's always cooking or cleaning or whatever. If they have kids, she's always the one who has to put in her time to take care of them. Maybe she's always the one who has to remind him about anniversaries or, hey, let's go out sometime. Or she's like, let me do something special for you. And it doesn't get reciprocated. So I just think it's sad. I just think it's sad that seems to happen so often. And, when I feel like when you look at society, it does seem as if women maybe don't look for love anymore. But I also think that even if that is the case, if a lot of women are just, starting to act like men, quote unquote, in a sense, like maybe only they care about love or whatever. Oh, sorry, not love, sex. Sorry. Maybe they only care about sex. Maybe they don't want anything serious, whatever. I think if they're going along with that, it's probably because society, I still think that it's playing into what men want. I still think it's ultimately women wanting to please men, because who are the ones that want sex the most? It's men. Women give it up wanting to appeal to them a lot of times. It's not always that, but this society has become very twisted in a lot of ways. It's really messed up in a lot of ways. And it seems like these days there aren't, or at least it's not promoted, this whole thought of women being independent in the sense that they have goals and dreams that they want to pursue. And, their lives aren't focused on catering to men. It's not about looking good so that a man will potentially notice you, looking good so that your husband walks up to you and notices you or whatever, doing all this. I mean, I just feel like not just women, honestly. I feel like everyone, men too, everyone needs to be independent in the sense that everyone needs to do things for the betterment of themselves. And then by doing so, by bettering yourself, by being true to yourself, discovering who you are, trying to become your best you and your most authentic self, you can then better attract the people who really should be in your life, for both men and women. And while I do still think that men should do the pursuing, I think that being interdependent, as I've heard some people say, really is the goal. I think that both people should be able to meet their own needs, but they're together because, like I said earlier, they don't need from each other, but they just like each other. They like who each other is. And that creates that love, that connection, that bond. And I think that that's even more authentic, because then you're not, if it doesn't work out, right? There's not this desperation of like, oh, what am I going to do now? Because the thing is, if there is this sort of codependency, right, where you're with this person because there's something that you need from them, then if something were to go wrong and this person were to leave you for whatever reason, the reason why you wouldn't want this person to leave isn't because of who they are. It's because of what they're providing for you. There's some deficiency that they were filling, and that was what you had them there for. It wasn't really for them. You weren't able to find a different person to fill that deficiency. This person did. And so now you're freaking out because, oh my gosh, like this need that I need filled, this person was filling it, and now I don't know what to do. If you can fill your needs for yourself, then if you break apart, I'm not saying it won't hurt, because I'm sure it will, because if you really did love and care for each other, then it's going to hurt. But you're not going to feel like, oh no, now there's this need that isn't being filled, whatever. And if you have a desire to ever go back to this person, or if you just find yourself missing this person in general, then you know that that emotion is coming from authentically missing them, and not just for something that was being provided for you. And I think when it comes to this whole concept of men needing women, of using them, it comes down to, a lot of times, a lot of men are deficient in areas that they look for women to fill for them. But if men work on themselves and they don't have those deficiencies and therefore those dependencies, then they'll be good. And, you know, I just wish that things just weren't so unbalanced, and that women could see that despite how much they desire love from a man, despite how much they want to hold out for this special unicorn of a man that does exist, I think he does exist, but I do think that it's important to speak on the rule rather than the exception, especially because when it comes to men being deficient or insecure or whatever, it literally can become dangerous in that they can get violent. And therefore, a woman is putting her life at risk. And, you know, it really can be a Russian roulette thing when it comes to men, because you don't know. And if he hasn't taken the time to properly develop himself in multiple areas, and he does have those deficiencies, I think he's more prone to be dangerous and violent and just act out. And so that's, you know, really especially why you need to make sure that you choose a man who has himself together, so that there's a less risk for that and he has more sense, you know. But, you know, again, I just feel like putting men on a pedestal the way that a lot of women do, it's very counterproductive to women and their development and who they are. Because again, since a lot of men really aren't looking for a relationship for one reason or another, and they really are only interested in sex or using a woman for whatever reason, a lot of times there will be women who maybe they did have their stuff together, and then they meet a man, and like I said, he's still got some sort of insecurity or deficiency or whatever, and then he sees her, she's all together, he's jealous, and then he tries to ruin her life however he can. It's not necessarily going to be unaliving her. It could be him getting her pregnant, which isn't to say that pregnancy in itself is a life-ruining thing, but it definitely can derail your life, slow you down, and if you end up being a single parent, and especially if you don't have support systems / community behind you to help, it definitely can be something that puts a big hindrance, or whatever you want to call it, on your life. And a man can purposely do that with the intent of just bringing you down because he doesn't feel that great about himself. And it's unfortunate, but it happens, it happens. And I think that for women who try to think that doesn't happen, or that can't happen, it's a very unfortunate place to put yourself in. So I don't necessarily think that the goal needs to be for women to not deal with men entirely. I do think if that is the case, it can ultimately be a lot safer because you're not taking a chance. But I mean, that could be towards a lot of things in life. If you don't take a risk, then, sometimes the grass isn't always greener, all those different sayings. But I do think that sometimes when you take a risk, you may find that things are worse, but you may find that things are better. But I think that really the goal just needs to be trying to better yourself so that you allow the right person in. You have better discretion because you have self-love and are able to better govern yourself and how people treat you. And then, essentially, if someone's presence in your life isn't working, you separate. Now, I do acknowledge that it can, like I referenced to earlier, be dangerous for women because depending on the type of man, if she decides she doesn't want anything to do with him, if he doesn't agree with that, he may, act out, and it could be really bad for her. So essentially, it could be a risk. But, I mean, hey. My point, like I said, just overall, I just wish that there wouldn't be such an emphasis on male validation for women. And I say that as someone who has unknowingly been under the thumb for it for a very long time and has had to indirectly deal with it in the sense that I have been surrounded by women who put men at the forefront rather than community and don't seem to really care that much about, their friendships and stuff like that. I've always found it really sad and unfortunate, and I never fully understood it. I blamed it on relationships in general. I didn't really link it to anything involving male validation and male identification, centeredness, whatever you want to call it, patriarchy. I never really linked it to that because I didn't know too much about it. But ultimately, I do acknowledge now that that's what it was. And unfortunately, I think that's probably how it'll continue to be, at least for a while. I don't really see things changing. And I think it's unfortunate too. I think that all the stuff I just named is a big part of the reason why you'll have a group of women who say that they don't like being friends with women. They don't want to be around women. Now, yes, women who say that could be just pick-me's, but I think it also could be the exact opposite, where you have women who are tired of being or trying to be friends with women who end up just sabotaging them or betraying them in some way because of a man. I know that one of the things that Princella says is that, women don't have to worry about dying alone because women are better at socializing and therefore should have friends and stuff like that. But I think it's kind of underrated how hard it can be to develop female friendships when so many women identify with men and put men first and really don't value female friendships like that. Like if you're constantly surrounded by other women who don't value friendships with other women, then who are you being friends with? Like, yeah, sure, you probably could be friends with women who aren't centering men, but then you have to try to find them. And because of the way that our society has been programmed, it's not really that easy to do. I mean, like I said, I didn't even really realize the ways that I was affected by it. And there may be even more ways that I'm affected by it that I don't realize yet. But in the ways that I have identified it in my own life and have shifted my thoughts on it, I definitely have become someone who is overall more confident, more self-serving. I feel lighter. I feel just overall more free as a person. But I don't think that that's most women. And I don't think that most women are receptive to it because, again, in my friendships, even though I didn't have this spin on, or this perspective of it with this male-centered thing, I think that even if I did, those women would not have listened to me. They never were really receptive to anything that I said regarding female friendships. And to me, it sounds like a lack of self-love. And in certain friendships, I'd say even a sign of self-hate. And I don't think that that's such an isolated thing to feel. So, again, I find it really unfortunate that so many women seem to live their lives based on male validation, and yet these men, a lot of them, I would even say the vast majority, again, not all, but a lot, don't even care about women like that, are laughing behind the scenes at how stupid they feel these women are. I even remember, at my last job, this guy who was interested in me, but he said he wasn't. One thing that I thought was really interesting, I told him, because I wasn't at the time and I didn't really have a lot of experience with men, but, one of the things I told him was that, I'm not really that confident. And he told me like, all you need is confidence or whatever. Now, he seemed to have lost interest in me. Or I guess it's not really that he lost interest because, on my last day, he still felt the need to hug me. And listen, that was not necessary. But he did stop pursuing me. But when I think about it, it makes me feel like, even though we didn't really know each other well or anything, he didn't know too much about me, it felt like he may, and I say may because again, most likely even it could have really just been this thing of, he just wanted sex, right? But I do acknowledge that I feel like he may have seen a value in me that I didn't see in myself. And the fact that I didn't see it was almost like a turnoff for him. And I just think that's an interesting thought if that is an angle that he was coming at it from. And it also makes me wonder if that's how maybe a lot of men, even if it's subconscious, think about women a lot of times too. Like when you have a bunch of women who are trying so hard to get male attention and male validation and do all this, are willing to do all this for a man's attention, I can't help but wonder, do a lot of men think like, why are you doing all this? Like, why do you feel like you have to do all this? Why do you feel like you're not enough? Why do you feel like you need to appeal to me? You're already like a woman. And I mean, it even could be the side of, well, all I'm going to do is use you anyway. I don't know why you're so hyped for a person who don't even want you for real. And then that's where the lack of respect comes in, because I do think a lot of times men don't respect women. But that's most likely because women aren't respecting themselves. I mean, I'll never forget this time I was watching this video and this guy, I don't fully remember his name, but I know he's a YouTuber, and they asked him, like, if you were a woman, would you date whoever this guy was? Who cares? And his response was, if I was a woman, I'd be saving myself until marriage. And it just made me think, like, that's probably how a lot of men feel. Yes, they do want to sleep with a bunch of women. And yes, they'll get mad if she doesn't do it. But I think even him getting mad because she won't do it is potentially a result of him feeling like he doesn't actually deserve it, right? And so if he's rejected, then it's a reminder that he's not actually good enough to get it, right? But if she gives it up, then he loses respect for her because he, again, wasn't good enough to actually get it. But it seems to me that it, in both cases, could be a result of the man really not feeling like he's good enough or feeling like he deserves that. Because, again, if a lot of men do only value sex and value woman for her body, then for him, that's like the ultimate thing that she could offer him. So if she gives it up so willingly and so easily, even though it's her, in his opinion, a lot of times her most prized possession, it's like, why would you give this up so easily? And how? And also, if you know this is all I want, why are you giving this up to me? Why wouldn't you make me earn this? Again, it could be the perspective of, I don't like the fact that I have to earn this because it represents me not actually being good enough to deserve it. And I don't like that about myself, right? I think a lot of men, I mean, I could be wrong, I'm not a man, but I could see where that thought would come in for them. And again, where the lack of respect comes from, and also where the conflicting interests come from. Because women look at it like, well, I'm interested in you. I want you to be interested in me. I know you like sex, so I want to give you what you want because I like you. And this is something that you like. And so I want to keep you around. And that's how, a woman will think about it a lot of times. Or, maybe, she wants it too, again, because she likes this guy. And she's like, well, I like him and he likes this. I want to do it because I like him too. And he'll probably like me more because this is the kind of thing he likes. But that's not the way I don't think men look at it. And I think, but then too, I feel like I'm right too, because otherwise, if men, I feel like if they really thought that, I don't even know how to phrase this, but essentially oh my gosh, the games that men play, the manipulation that they do, right? To make this woman think, and again, once again, that aids to what I'm saying, that men know what women want. They know that they want these connections and to be liked and everything. They know that. And that's why they lie. They literally will lie. They will say whatever they think that they need to say, be whoever they think that they need to be in order to get this woman and get her just for the thing that they want her for. And while women are sitting over here wanting a man for him, for who he is, for him to love her, because she's going to love him, that's not the same thing that he's thinking. That's not where he's coming from. That's not what he wants from her. She wants his love. He wants her body. Most of the time, I genuinely think that's the case. And I genuinely think that's why a lot of situationships, relationships, whatever you want to call them, go the way that they go. And unfortunately, I feel like it really comes down to just women just being misled, brainwashed, delusional, naive, whatever you want to call it, oblivious to the reality of the situation. And listen, it sucks. Because no, men should not be going around here lying, manipulating, playing all these games. But, that's what they're going to do. And that, again, is why I personally still believe that a woman shouldn't just give it up quickly to a man. It's not about purity. It's about, they don't deserve it. Most of the time, they don't deserve it. It's all they want, and they don't even deserve it. So why give them something that they want so badly that they don't deserve? And if he wants to say, oh, well, every other girl's giving it up, and if you won't do it, some other girl, then go to that other girl then. Because, it even reminds me of the whole thing with, asking a woman what she brings to the table. And, in one respect, I get it. But in the other respect, I think, again, the problem comes down to really simply what I've been saying. Who really cares what she brings to the table when you most likely only want one thing anyway? You just want her for her body. Now, if she tells you what she brings to the table, at this point, considering you really don't most of the time care about who she is as a person, you're really just trying to get other things that you can use her for other than her body. Like, oh, she's willing to clean, she's willing to cook, whatever. It's like, come on. The question itself, when, I think when you look at it from a woman's point of view, makes sense. But when you think about how men operate and what they actually want, now the question is garbage. Because it really doesn't matter. I think for the vast majority of men, what women bring to the table doesn't matter. And I say that because a lot of them say it doesn't matter. Because she could say, well, I'm educated, I have money, I have my own house. And what do a lot of men say? We don't care about that. They say it. So why even ask the question of what a woman brings to the table when you don't care most of the time anyway? I mean, honestly, really, what do you care? What do you care what she brings? You don't. You've already said that you don't. And if you're one of the few men who really do care what she brings to the table because you're actually interested in getting to know her, well, you're very much in the minority. But I also feel like, honestly, you probably wouldn't ask the question in the first place. You probably would just actually get to know her and find out what she brings without needing it like just spelled out for you so you can add things to your list of things to use her for other than just her body, which is all you really care about most of the time anyway. So, yeah, this whole thing with, what value do women bring or whatever, it's like you approached her for a reason, her and not some other girl. Please, like, stop the cap. Just please. And if you're not interested in her anymore, then just walk away, go find someone else. It was never that deep for you anyway, most of the time. Most of the time, it was never that deep. So you might as well just go find another girl. It shouldn't be hard because from what I've heard, most men find most women attractive anyway. So you just go to the next attractive woman because you didn't care about who she was. You just cared about her being attractive. There's another attractive girl right over there. So you just go to her. But again, I just wish that this was something that more women would think about and consider. I understand why they don't, though. Because, I mean, look how much and how long it took for me to realize it. And this is with me already valuing female friendships and thinking something was off and thinking something was weird and going against the grain and never really caring about relationships. This is with all of that. It took all of this and being basically spoon-fed the information from people on YouTube. It came all of that for me to come to these conclusions. And also not being traumatized in specific ways that would more so guide me in the direction of continuing to go down that path. But that's not the same for most women, so I get it. But with that being said, I'm going to wrap this up.